While I love the guy and respect his place in the PlayStation exclusive pantheon, let's be real here. Original trilogy Kratos was a rage-filled arsehole. And that's an appraisal direct from the horse's mouth. Todd Papy, director of the last major outing, 2013's God of War Ascension. In that particular adventure, Papy and his team desperately tried to layer emotional depth onto our favourite demigod. But, ultimately, Kratos' list of motivations remained as Spartan as his heritage. Vengeance and murder were still his go-tos. Today, Santa Monica Studios is taking another shot at crafting a more human and relatable Kratos. Their thought process in a nutshell? Papy should have just made Kratos a Papy.
Get in the boat, boy.
Despite being the least qualified person to head a family since Charlie Manson, the Ghost of Sparta now has a son in God of War, a sequel that self-identifies as a fresh beginning rather than a reboot. Having a sickly whelp in tow is definitely a new look for our walking fortress of solitude, and the radical paradigm shifts in the formula don't end there. Game director Cory Barlog, whose resume includes lead animating the original God of War and directing its follow-up, has opted to secretly replant our hero into the backyard of the Norse gods. Unbeknownst to Odin, Freya, Thor, and the rest of Team Viking, this Greek immigrant has promptly moved in, shacked up with a local huntress named Faye, grown a hipster beard, put his signature Blades of Chaos weapons in storage, and sired a boy named Atreus. What happens next is kept vague. Faye dies for some reason, and Kratos, a largely absentee father, returns to handle the funeral arrangements with his 10-year-old offspring. At game start, they're barely more than strangers to one another, and, even though the boy is green, a perilous journey to sprinkle Faye's ashes onto a mountaintop begins.
I haven't been sick in a long time. I'm better now.
Fine. Come on then.
You want me to hit you?
I want you to try.
Now, before we continue, here's a little confession. When the game was first revealed, I thought Atreus had annoyance written all over him. Those fancy glyph tattoos on his neck and wrist may as well have read dead weight and dead meat in my mind. Now, as I watch the credits after 20-odd hours, I've grown to love him, and honestly, I don't think I could have reached this point without his help. He's a fully formed and interesting character who's the best thing to happen to this series since the removal of that mash circle to open a chest mechanic. Fact is, as I redeploy into this game once more, playing the Dark Souls-esque madness that is Give Me God of War difficulty, it will be Atreus' skill set and gear that I'll prioritise first. He's that bloody useful. First of all, he's a welcome set of extra eyes in a sequel that shifted away from fixed camera antics, which used to give you a full view of the battlefield. Now, you've got a traditional third-person view, which makes for a big old blind spot. Now, a combination of incoming attack markers and verbal warnings from your boy are the only things standing between you and some new speed holes in your pancreas. Better yet, Junior is a crack shot with his bow and a small quiver of cooldown arrows. You need only put an enemy in the center of your vision and tap square to have them fired upon. And more surgical strikes against mini-boss weak points and environmental puzzles can be achieved by holding L2. Throw in shock and light ammo variations, plus a limited ability to melee foes, and Atreus grows from a mere means to interrupt enemies into a potent killer in his own right. Daddy has a new bag of tricks too. Using the D-pad, Kratos' offensive options can be cycled between unarmed, his new axe, and a mysterious third option that rocks up mid-game and shan't be spoiled here. Clobbering people with your fists lacks range, but your blows add to a special meter beneath your enemy's health bar. Once full, you're given the option to rip their bloody head off with a click of R3, which makes the reward well worth the risk. Adjust enough attitudes and you'll build up your Spartan rage meter too, at which point the fisticuffs go up to 11. Much like Atreus, I had to warm to the idea of the axe, but it didn't take long to fall head over heels. How can you not love an axe with a Mjolnir-like ability to be thrown and recalled to your hand with a tap of triangle? And typically it will fly back through the heads of any bad guys as it returns to sender. Spamming it to freeze enemies as a projectile weapon isn't very sustainable, however, as the axe's role is very much close-range combos dealt with R1 light attacks and R2 knockback attacks. Even at his most unupgraded, combat with Kratos always feels meaty and visceral. It only gets better too, when you level him up and unlock a dozen or so unique skills for each of his disciplines. Speaking of, this is the deepest skill customization and equipment upgrade system the series has ever seen. What we have here is more reminiscent of the Darksiders series than God of War. Loot of varying quality can be crafted from collected materials, and everything you swing or wear can be slotted with multiple perk and stat-enhancing jewels. All the choicest materials and trinkets you'll need are locked behind puzzles and hidden items that are crammed into every nook and cranny of this world. There's also a bunch of optional combat challenges against seriously swole enemies who will one-shot your ass, even on the lowest difficulty. Speaking of challenge, most of the upgrading and fancy pants armor chasing can be largely ignored on the lowest two difficulties, but fretting over your gear on the deep end difficulties is imperative to your survival. I've aced every single Give Me God of War difficulty in this series, but this one is something else. It's not just an enemy health and damage output increase, they're rocking new behaviours that demand expert crowd control skills. Fail to cull the flock just right and your foes will regen health and enter berserker states. It's not pretty. What is pretty though, are the flawless, gobsmacking 4K visuals in this game. Intricately detailed, this is an artistic feast that's constantly serving up new and exotic courses. The production values are easily on par with the best work of Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games, plus the blinkers have come right off to offer you a semi-open world. The jump button has been replaced with a more contextual solution, so you're still on a tighter leash than most games in the genre. That said, and in the context of this franchise, there's much more latitude and side quests on offer this time. The sizable playground of Midgard is but one of a handful of dimensional planes you'll visit, though a number of these remain unavailable. DLC. Back to the topic of changes, when I first heard of the switch to traditional third-person view, I had a concern. The old nature of a fixed camera system allowed Santa Monica Studios to use smart techniques in order to deliver epic-scale environments and over-the-top moments you just simply wouldn't see in other games. That said, this new camera never pans out to show Kratos scaling the navel hair of some mountain-sized giant he's going to kill in 10 minutes via some Ant-Man-like brain surgery. But Santa Monica still knows how to deliver scale and blockbuster wow factor in other ways. The boss fights you'll get here are fewer and much less cataclysmic than before, but they're some of the best I've played in recent memory. There's some stunning choreography and classy camera work on display here, not to mention an increase in interactivity that just beats the hell out of the old QTEs. A lot of things have changed, and there are a few things that may catch purists off guard, at least initially. Tonally, this is a huge diversion from what's gone before. This is an intelligently written story of a deity trying to make his son into a better god, while keeping his true nature a secret from him. In turn, we have a son who's trying to Miyagi his old man into becoming a better human. Also, there's a complex rogues gallery of Norse gods who offer new dysfunction and intrigue, most of which centers on the themes of setting impossible expectations and the dangers of being either overprotective or outright distant to your loved ones. Being a dad myself, this game resonated with me a great deal. I think the tumultuous Kratos-Atreus arc is the most moving and memorable father-son tale that's ever been attempted on our medium. Kudos to Santa Monica Studios. Basically, this somber narrative is so good that I didn't mind the franchise hallmarks that had to be stripped away in order to keep the story credible. For example, the gore has been dialed right back from a dismember fest and decapitate-a-thon to violence levels that won't give Atreus PTSD and a complex about his old man. He is, after all, just a kid who has difficulty killing even a deer for meat. Likewise, and obviously, you can expect no hidden orgy minigame for Kratos. Sorry, fans. But you know what? It's difficult to mourn the loss of the sexploits, because God of War has matured for the better. It is, in all ways, evolved beyond the juvenile excesses that earned it a spotlight way back in 2005, but in doing so, it's lost next to none of its swashbuckling addictiveness and wow factor. This unusually thoughtful and technically impressive entry revitalizes the whole franchise like a leveled pottery barn full of green orb vases. Bring on your DLC and sequels, Santa Monica Studios, because I'm axing for more already.
The mountain. It's gonna be a long trip.
Yes, but an important one.
Whoa.